I was playing kind of a known quantity. I mean, it wasn't an imaginary person. I think no matter what I did, if you go and watch the interviews with the actual man, he's got something that is even deeper and more frightening. But it was very intimidating to try and capture what I saw in him. I didn't go to work every day thinking that it was my job to scare people. I just thought I was supposed to capture the complexities of this man to the best of my abilities. And I got a lot of help doing that from my fellow cast members, all of whom were extraordinary scene partners. But yeah, Ray actually scared the shit out of me, much more than I scared him. And Winona actually frightened me a little bit when she got mad at me in the hospital. That was a very powerful scene. So I think I frightened James Franco more than anybody. That's why he's not here. You know, throughout the course of history, we've seen situations where normal people have been pushed into extreme violence. Usually it tends to be a group endeavor, not an isolated incident. I think we all have to control ourselves. You know, people, whether it's something as extreme as murder or just the way we treat one another, we have to have some discipline about that. It's obviously not a given that people are going to be kind to each other. That's obvious. I think that cat's out of the bag. So you have to make an effort in life to be kind to people and not hurt people. But murdering, I don't know about that. I don't think I could. I personally could never imagine murdering someone. Maybe if someone was threatening my daughter or something, maybe in that circumstance, but other than that, I find it absolutely terrifying. So I don't think so. It's something that's very hard to capture, which is ironic because we all have families. There's very few people that don't have them, and yet it's hard to make it seem like you're not faking it, particularly because you don't get to spend a lot of time. You know, you spend your whole life with your family. You meet the actors you're acting with a couple of days before you start shooting. So it's hard to whip that out of thin air. But I think for me personally, I drew on, like I mentioned earlier, I have a daughter, and that's one thing that was tremendously helpful. Is reflecting on my own experience of being a father, and also just the research I did into Kuklinski, watching him talk about his family and seeing how much they meant to him. It's hard when you watch the interviews to know when he's lying, when he's telling the truth, when he's just fooling around with people. But the one thing I was fairly certain of every time I watched him talk about his family was that they were, without a doubt, the most important people to him in the world, and that he would do anything for them. And but he's not. It's tricky because he didn't have a lot of hobbies, or there weren't a lot of extracurricular activities. In a way, he was kind of a dull person because he admitted himself. He's like, all I really want to do is sit at home, and he had no passions whatsoever other than being at home and being with his family. That was the only thing that seemed to make him happy. But so I just followed his lead in terms of how he described himself. I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, no one should feel like after they watch this movie, they shouldn't walk out of the theater saying, oh, now I know everything about Richard Kuklinski and his family. I mean, that's not possible. I mean, there's so much, you can't even, like I said, mentioned earlier, when you watch Kuklinski talk in these interviews, you don't even know half the time whether he's telling the truth or not. You know, it's a very ethereal, kind of mystical story to try and capture concretely. So it's more, I think, or the way I look at it, is it's more inspired by these actual people, but it's certainly not, you shouldn't feel like an authority on anything after watching the movie. It's more a meditation on what possibly their life could have been like, because it's such a hard thing to imagine. But we were ultimately using our imaginations very much, I think. Yeah.